Let's talk about the power of confusion. I am super excited, truly excited for what humanity is in the middle of right now. You see, as a teacher of spiritual principles, someone who assists those who are moving through a spiritual awakening, that means that they're becoming self-aware about who they have been in the world, but are becoming to discover their divine side that is not of this world. And to hold those two opposites is very confusing. And it's a necessary confusion because we need to break down our idea about how things are supposed to be. See, as humans, we get conditioned to believe things are very solid. Things are what you can feel, touch. It's everything is about what is physical. But right now, we are beginning to lose things that we thought were really solid. People are losing jobs. People are losing their lives. People are losing the ability to touch, to connect. I'm losing the ability to go dancing with my friends. People are losing the ability to, in many ways, go out of their homes as they used to before. Now they've got to put a mask on. So what used to be normal, what felt like you could count on your government to tell you the truth, the medical world to be honest and to validate things in a way that everybody agreed with, the media to tell you the truth, give you the facts, give you information that wasn't unbiased. So it used to be in a galaxy far, far away that those things were part of our reality. Now we're in the midst of this crazy coronavirus time, and here we are, May 2020, and people are very confused. What seemed so solid before, that you could count on before, we can't count on that now. Many of those things that we thought were truths now are being questioned. The experts that we thought we could count on, we are not certain about. The media that we thought was freedom of speech, freedom of the press, a place where you could find all kinds of different things, and you feel into whether it feels right to you or not. Maybe some people would do research and could gather pretty quickly, maybe that wasn't right for me, or maybe, yeah, this really had something to it. But now so much of is being censored. If it doesn't follow a specific narrative, it's almost like we're confused about, I can't form my own opinion. You're taking away what might have felt like the right opinion for me. We're confused about the role of the medical establishment, where we had the ability to decide, is that good for me? Is that something that's going to help my body or not? Where we could feel inside and determine, yeah, I'll use it or not. We're confused about being able to go to our doctors and now finding out, well, no, we can't see the doctor unless we have a specific illness like COVID-19. So many things are being upended. Things are being turned upside down. But as somebody who has been on a spiritual journey now for 18 years, and I'm going to say my awakening began really in earnest in 2007 when I had an encounter of the best kind, and I met God, I met Source Spirit, whatever you want to call it, the consciousness of the source of all that is, just completely embodied me. I was inside of it, and it was inside of me. In that clarity of the oneness that we are, all confusion dropped away. You see, we're all very confused actually when we come to this planet, when we incarnate, we become confused from the get-go. Because in reality, and we have heard this said before, we're divine beings having a physical experience. We're spiritual beings having a human experience. But when we enter into the world and we are raised, we're conditioned by everybody who's been here longer than we have, and they have forgotten their divinity, they have forgotten their true spirituality, and they become indoctrinated with that they're humans first. And everything about being a human is what becomes a priority. Feeding the body, taking care of the body, having a house to take care of, the family, having a job, making money, creating security, doing a job that you do for 30, 40 years, you retire, and then the path seemed pretty normal for everybody that followed that specific path. And along the way, we totally forgot our divine nature, because in many ways it was taught out of us For me, growing up Catholic, and I really don't know too many people my age, my generation, it doesn't matter what religion they grew up with. Some even grew up atheists. That there was a sense that there is a higher power and it's outside of us. Maybe for somebody who's an atheist, there's not necessarily a power per se, but you can't deny that you're inside of something grander. So it's there. There's an intelligence or something. But when that power is not something that we understand exists inside of us, and we are inside of it, and it is inside of us, because it's a paradox. How can I be one with the Creator? If the Creator created everything and I am just over here, how can I be one with something so grand? Because what is grand is also the speck. It's tiny. It's the essence of what we are. So in this time of confusion, everything has to be questioned because we're moving into a whole new world. Eckhart Tolle wrote about it in his book, A New Earth. These are prophecies that have been going on for a very long time. The Mayans, the indigenous people, have been telling us that after 2012, the world was going to end because something new was emerging, but that something new hadn't emerged. So they really couldn't talk about what that new was, but they could tell us that the old was ending. 2012 was a line in the sand where if you look at the calendars, if you look at the cycles of how the planet rotates in this galaxy and this how all things are connected, this galaxy inside of the universe, teachings that Greg Braden has so masterfully been able to make simple for us to understand in many of his books, you begin to understand that when our mind was trained into believing only what was right in front of us, we forgot what was right around us. So we are being confused right now in the middle of what is happening. I'm going to say on purpose. And you know who's confusing us? We are. We are confusing ourselves through something called cognitive dissonance. Our mind was trained to believe that we're only humans and we follow a specific path. There are other people who take care of us. There are other people who protect us. And we have a constitution that gives us rights and things are a certain way. You go to the doctor, you get your medicine. You know, we quarantine the sick people. And all of those things have been turned upside down because what happens is we project the world that we see. You see, I'm very comfortable with the teachings of A Course in Miracles, and my peace comes from the fact that I know for sure there is no confusion. There is only clarity that I and the Father are one. And from that place, what's happening out there, I recognize that it is all happening for me to see, to inform me of what it is that I believe about myself. And when we get confused about, that politician isn't doing what they said that they were going to do, when that medical institution is contradicting what this other medical institution is contradicting, when my job is no longer my source of security, when I cannot even hug people that I love because I'm being told that I'm going to get them sick or they're going to get me sick and we could die. When what I'm observing out there is no longer matching what I thought to be true, it sends the brain, it sends the mind into total confusion. Cognitive dissonance is trying to hold two things that are opposite and trying to make sense of them at the same time. One that you thought was totally wrong, one that you thought was totally right, and somehow you're trying to get them to fit together. It's very uncomfortable. When I was going through my spiritual awakening and I had that encounter with God, I had a really hard time accepting that I was one with God when I had been told God was outside of me. And then, of course, the guilts, the shames, the fears, the concerns about punishment and judgment, all those things came up and I had to sort them out. Right now, we're in the middle of an opportunity to have all of these beliefs that we've been holding as the truth of how the world should be are coming up into our consciousness for us, basically, to sort them out. So there is power in confusion because it can lead to clarity if you do one thing and one thing only. And that is to recognize that your perception of that is coming from your mind. And once you realize that you can perceive whatever is happening out there differently, then that out there doesn't have power to confuse you. It just has the ability to inform you. But you're the one that has to decide, what does this really mean? Why am I here? What is this for? God, what would you have me do? Clarity comes from going to the place inside of us where we begin to get answers to the questions that we have been taught could only be answered by the outside world. But that clarity comes from going to the place in me, you go to the place in you, where the answers are actually the same. You see, when we connect to the source of all that is, this source that created nature, that created the galaxies, that created the universe, that connects everything so perfectly, that holds everything with love, where nothing, the planets are not competing against each other. The animals don't compete with each other. The oceans don't say, I'm bigger ocean than you are. Everything just has a place, has a role, and it just is. But the humans, we have been trained into believing things that cause us to go into competition, into when we enter into the competition because we see each other as separate, not as one, we begin to believe that other people can take from us what would keep us safe, what would make us whole, what would make us complete. So in the training of how it is that we're supposed to be a human, we got trained out of knowing that our divinity is where the true answers lie that keep us feeling grounded, steady inside of a place where we recognize our eternalness. So fears in this world don't exist. The only fear that might show up that we could make sense of is the fear of maybe death, something taking our life away. And in our humanness, if we're fearing, the danger of a rock falling, a boulder coming down the mountain and falling on us, and I'm thinking of that because my daughter lives in Colorado where they do have avalanches and people do get killed by rocks, or something natural, some kind of a natural disaster. We're not at a stage in our life where we're concerned that big animals are going to come get us, unless, of course, you're in the ocean and there are sharks. But except for that fear, that would be reasonable. There is no reason to fear death in any other way. There's no reason to fear one another in any other way. There's no reason to fear that there's not going to be enough food. We are confused because in our training to just be a human, the idea of separation and competition and haves and have-nots and who's better, who's lesser, what's the popular one and unpopular one, we have been conditioned to think in divided ways, to think that there is not enough to go around, which creates that competition. But right now, all of these things that we cannot count on out there to be stable are causing us to come inside and find stability in here. Well, the only way you're going to find stability in here is if you make peace with this God that you thought was outside, this creative force outside of you, and begin to commune with it, begin to be informed by it, begin to open up your mind to receive inspiration. Like when Einstein went to the creative source to get formulas, or a singer or a musician goes to the creative source to get the new song, to get the new lyrics, the new melodies. When an interior designer goes into their imagination to find, how do I put all of this stuff together, and they get pictures of the final product that has never been before. It's because we're tapping into something beautiful that is powerful, infinitely creative. There's no end to what it can create. So this world is falling apart in many ways because we have to see where we need to fall apart. We need to let our ideas fall apart. We need to let ourselves be totally confused, because if there's one thing that I am really certain about, is that when I connected with that source that gave me clarity, how the world is supposed to look began to make sense for me. When everybody comes inside, as Gandhi said, you be the change you want to see in the world begins to change. This is a slow process, but the process is speeding up because the breaking down is speeding up. Things that we're watching take place now, we never would have imagined before could happen, but they're happening at an accelerated rate because there is also an accelerated rate that is wanting to invite us into clarity. But while we're trying to hold on to the past, while we're afraid of what is breaking down, we stay confused because we're holding on to something that we're not giving ourselves permission to think what else could show up here. We have to open up our minds. One of the key aspects of being on a spiritual journey and finding clarity is to be open with curiosity, because to want to control the past and then have it be falling apart is confusing. But if you are open-minded, if you know that you don't know how it's all supposed to look, you invite this divine energy, this divine inspiration, this divine infinite source of all that is, with ideas that will support us in being inspired for the creation of the new that is what wants to show up. But you cannot receive those ideas of where we're headed if your mind has not been cleared. You see, confusion is leading us to let us know what's been clogging our mind. Clarity is about getting rid of what's in the mind, opening up the mind, and being in many ways in an I do not know state of beingness. Because when we are in I do not know, something can inform us. The musician that knows what that song is supposed to be like is not going to receive the inspiration. If Einstein knew what that formula was supposed to be like, well, he would not have received it because he would have been operating with what he already knew. That would have only given him more of the same. But his mind got quiet. He had clarity, not confused, trying to create a formula with what he knew, but clarity. I don't know. Let me receive it. And then comes creativity, comes something brand new that inspires. So I am excited personally because until we are confused about what we believe is true, we cannot make room for clarity. We cannot be in a space of saying, I don't know. Confusion humbles us if we let it, or it can terrorize us if we're trying to hold on to it. So I say that there is power in confusion, and I invite you to be open and to just begin to say, well, if things are not meant to stay this way, how else could they show up? And then stay quiet. Don't impose your ideas from the past, and rather stay in a state of wonder, curiosity. I wonder what that would look like. And I promise you, ideas that have never been are going to come into your mind, but it needs your invitation. I had no idea how much I was blocking my creativity when I was trying to hold on to what I thought was the right way for me to live my life. And it took me almost 18 years to break down those old thought patterns, to break down the solidity in my mind of what I was expecting my life to be like, so I could say I did it right. And it gave me a sense of safety. But when my life began to fall apart, marriages began to fall apart, when I was confused about a husband who stopped trusting me, when I became confused about what work was I going to do when my old real estate career began to end, when the real estate market shifted, when I began to go through my spiritual awakening and I knew I wanted to teach spirituality, but I wasn't quite sure what. When I began confused about the way things should be, peace began to enter into me when I began to get curious. And from that curiosity came a clarity, an opening, a clearing is a more appropriate word in my mind. And inside of that clearing came bubbling through this creativity that I knew did not come from me, that I trusted was coming from a source that was using me as its vessel. As St. Francis of Assisi said, God, make me an instrument of your peace. I became an instrument of God's ideas, and I've not been confused since. That's why I'm facing what is happening in the world as an opportunity to show me how I'm showing up, as an opportunity to show me the things that need to end, the controls that were set up that need to end, so that all of my brothers and sisters truly can tap into something inside of them that wants to be expressed. And it is going to be expressed. We're moving in that direction. There's no way to suppress the magnificence, the divinity that is in all of us that we have not been taught to tap into because we got disconnected from God and put it outside of us. This is a time of oneness. In this great awakening, we're reclaiming the truth of who we are. We will never be clear. We will never be fully creative until we stop being confused about who we are. We are divine beings having a human experience. The human experience is only going to be fun and easy when we allow the divine part of us to inform us and guide us and allow us to create something that's never been before. Letting go of the solidity, letting go of what we were expecting to happen is necessary so that we can be surprised with what's going to be fresh and new. Thanks a bunch, and I hope you enjoy this. And if you do, share it with your friends. Let's help empower people through these confusing times. Bye-bye.